Today we're looking at Act 2. This is often broken down into Act 2A and Act 2B because Act 2 is much longer than the other two acts. Act 1 is referred to as the setup, and Act 2 is the confrontation. Here, stakes increase as well as conflict is introduced that challenges our protagonist but also sharpens them. Here's what we typically see. Something happens where we see our character accept the call to adventure. They cross some sort of threshold and step outside of what is familiar, as well as stepping in the direction of their goal. Here we see the Sandra Bullock character emerging from the makeover, ready to step into the world of beauty pageants as a contestant in Miss Congeniality. This is where we see Mark Zuckerberg designing the Facebook page for the twins, while secretly designing his own version of the platform at the same time in the social network. Next, the B story is introduced. This character can be a love interest, a mentor, or even a thing, like Wilson in Castaway. And then comes the fun and games. Here we see our protagonist either making progress or repeatedly failing in the pursuit of their goal. In Inside Out, this is where joy and sadness try to navigate the maze of long-term memories. In Bridesmaids, this is where the Kristen Wiig character suggests a restaurant where everyone gets food poisoning, resulting in all the bridesmaids getting sick when trying on dresses for the big day. And then we hit the midpoint. This is the false success or the false defeat moment of the film. In Bridesmaids, we see the moment when the Kristen Wiig character is overruled by the other bridesmaids to have an expensive bachelorette party in Vegas. In Room, this is the moment where Jack goes outside for the first time. So this is where I typically wrap up Act 2A when I am doing my scene outlines. I broke down how I go about actually doing the individual scene outlines in the last video, but for our activity today in this 30-day challenge, we're going to focus on doing just that, the scene outlines for Act 2A. In a second, I'm going to break down what you can typically find in Act 2B, but for everybody who's doing this 30-day challenge, that's our next activity in the challenge. So when you next have your time where you work on your screenplay after today, this is what you'll focus on, doing the scene outlines for Act 2B. Now back to breaking down Act 2B. After the midpoint, we see the bad guys closing in. Here, our character faces the opposite trajectory of what they experienced leading up to the midpoint. So if everything was just going bad, things start to go good, but more than likely we see our characters have somewhat of a false success, and this is the humbling point, the midpoint. Everything from there starts to go downhill. In Bridesmaids, this is the moment where the Kristen Wiig character gets all the bridesmaids kicked off the plane and ruins the Vegas trip. We also see the Kristen Wiig character become her own worst enemy when she ruins what could have been a beautiful moment with a guy who actually cares about her. Brooklyn is an epic example of bad guys closing in. After a death in the family, Saoirse's character has to leave the new life she single-handedly created in America to go home to Ireland. Afraid of losing her, her boyfriend in America asks if they can get married before she goes. Even though she doesn't come across incredibly enthusiastic, they secretly get married, hoping to be reunited after a month. However, when she gets home, the clock starts ticking for her to be reunited with her husband in America. However, there is a change in trajectory as we see her take on her sister's old job, she's reunited with her mother, and then in a plot twist, she falls for someone else. With both internal and external forces interfering in her journey, it's not clear on which life she will decide to pursue fully. Her life in America or her life in Ireland. This leads us to the all is lost moment. This is the rock bottom moment of despair that our protagonist confronts. It's the whiff of death moment in the film where we see the death of a friend, a loved one, a mentor, and it's also the part of the film where the love interests usually separate. To continue with the Brooklyn example, this is where Saoirse's character places yet another unopened letter from her husband into a drawer alongside more unanswered letters. In a single moment, our protagonist denies her husband, but also walks away from the new life that she created in America. Our final part of Act 2 is the dark night of the soul. This is the point in the screenplay or the film where our protagonist is beaten up to the point of feeling completely broken, hopeless, and clueless. It can also be a liberating moment in the film because this is the part where our protagonist reflects on everything they've been through and they confront their inner demons and their flaws, and then they decide to hopefully persevere and move forward, or they could decide to remain captive. Kristen Wiig's character gets uninvited from the wedding after losing it at the wedding shower. Her car then breaks down, and then the man she's hurt helps her fix it, as well as gives her a piece of his mind on her behavior, only to have the man who has hurt her show up to save her from this moment. But after everything she's been through and learned, she gets out of the car and walks away from making yet another bad decision. I find writing Act 2A far more enjoyable than writing Act 2B, but if Act 2B is written well, I find it's where the breakthrough happens in the story. It's where you get lost in the story and so absorbed in the characters' choices that when you get to the end of Act 2, it feels like the ultimate cliffhanger. So for everyone who's doing this 30-day challenge, good luck with outlining Act 2A and the scenes in Act 2B. And I'll see you in the next video where we will continue with this challenge. Take care. Let me know how it goes. Bye-bye.